I guess this is the beginning.
Why don't you briefly outline what it is that we're doing here so that people have a sense of what this is?
God, this is so weird. Okay, I'm Arnold of Goblin Punch.
I'm Nick of Papers and Pencils.
Yep, I had the idea as I was listening to a podcast about D&D that there are a lot of D&D podcasts that are interesting and fun, but they're all very fluffy. They don't really get into the mechanics of a module or the details of game design. They're mostly just stories with banter layered on top, which is fine. But one of my big interests is, aside from banter with stories layered on top, is to actually think about and talk about what makes a good dungeon, how dungeons are designed, and what goes through players' minds as they are doing them. So I pitched this idea to Nick for a podcast called Go Die in a Hole, where we'll run through modules very quickly, and we'll talk about those same game design features without taking the whole thing very seriously. I pitched the idea to him, and he seems to like it so far. And the first module we selected was B1, In Search of the Unknown, something I don't know very much about. I know it was for basic rules. It was designed by Mike Carr, who does not have a very long lineage in the D&D TSR world, but I know he edited a great deal of things back in the old days. But I think this is his only module.
One thing about this module that I have to say, because it has nothing to do with the design of it, but I absolutely love the art in this module. The piece on the back with the adventuring party fighting the lizard men, I've actually had hanging on my wall for like 4 or 5 years now. It's the coolest thing.
No, the art is good. A lot of it is kind of deceptive. Like, there's some pictures of stuff in there that doesn't necessarily occur in the module.
I've never read it, so I have no idea.
No, it's a weird module. It's a mix of, like, old and new thoughts. Like, some parts are just huge expanses of boring, mundane listings of room contents. But some parts I definitely recognize as the ingredients for good, fun, interesting gameplay.
Well, we can't talk about it too much because I'm about to try and play through it.
So, yeah, we should just jump in. I don't know what I'm doing. I think once I get into the whole DM role, I'll feel more comfortable.
Right on.
Podcasters Forum.
So, run some D&D for me, Daddy.
Yeah, don't mind if I do. You might want to sit down for this. Do you want to introduce your 6 guys? You got 6 guys.
I do. I have 6 guys. I have a party of a cleric named Mulgar, a thief named Sporaga, a fighter named Mohog, a dwarf named Krago, and 2 magic users named Glom and Nikar. All of these being taken from the list of possible player characters at the back of the module.
Yeah, the module came with a whopping list of 48 pre-gens, because I guess stat space is...
Calling them pre-gens is way too generous. They are names. They are just names.
I mean, if you go back a few pages, they do have lists of stats for them. So I can tell you that Mulgar the Merciful is 18 Wisdom, but only 8 Constitution.
Well,
shit like that.
I just stayed on the page that you told
there's
me
random
I was allowed
tables
to look at, so...
Yeah, we're not going to use stats anyway. This is just quick and dirty. Wham bam. Thank you, sir.
Well, then cut all that shit out so I don't look like an idiot.
Okay, deal. Here's what you have heard. There once was... Oop, wrong page. Telling a long story very short, there once was a very famous pair of adventurers called Rogan and Zeligar. And they adventured for many years and acquired many trophies and bested many foes. Recruited a small army like you do once you hit name rank in BXD&D. And they built a stronghold for themselves, basically a bro cave called Quasqueton, which I think sounds kind of Canadian to me, but I'm not going to judge. And they had a bunch of money in there. You heard they have a fantastic gem the size of a man's fist. You heard they have orc slaves. You heard that they built a fantastic 2-level dungeon. You heard it has a rear exit. You hear that everyone who goes in there has never returned to tell the tale. That's enough rumors for you, sirs. But you have heard that caves at Quasqueton are ripe for the picking, because no one has seen Rogan or Zeligar in a long time, meaning this is a grand opportunity for some old-fashioned looting. You only hope you're not too late and that other looters have not picked through the rich and ripe corpse of this dungeon before you have a chance to get there. And you also hope that Rogan and Zeligar are not there, as they are known to be quite badass.
All right, I go to the dungeon.
All right, you find yourself in a big old gaping hole in the side of a mountain. It's covered with brush and scrub. Plenty of well-traveled muddy tracks lead in, and you can see a familiar outline of a 10 by 10 hallway leading.
It's like a carved hallway, or is this just like a big natural opening in the mountain?
It is definitely hewn into a big old usual square shape. And there's tons of signs of foot traffic here. They don't mention it in the module much, but based on the size of this excavation, a lot of people have been going in and out of this place. So it's a bit overgrown. There's some more recent tracks. Some are muddy, some are not.
I mean, if people are going in and out of this place, like if there's like a settlement in there, or something like a settlement, then was I able to find out in the nearest town or anything? Are there people who trade with this settlement in this dungeon?
No one's heard of these guys for decades.
Oh, decades. Okay.
Decades they've been gone. It's assumed that they're adventurers. Adventurers are weird. Sometimes they kind of just like lay low under the radar.
Okay.
And actually, it was supposed to be kind of a secret place, but given the size of this place, it can't be too secret, you know.
Even if no one's heard of them in decades, like, if I were to like go find an old guy and say like, hey, do you remember when this place was more active?
Yeah, man. I mean, old guys are known to live for decades, sometimes even longer. I mean, those were some of the rumors I told you. More rumors are facts like the walls speak to visitors. There's also a rumor to be a great trophy room. There's also a rumor to be magical guards. You've also heard that there's treasure in a pool of water.
So one more question before I just dive headfirst into this dungeon then. These old guys that I've been talking to and hearing these rumors from...
One-armed Pete.
Okay.
And no-armed Larry.
They tell me that there were orc slaves down there. Now, if the place has been abandoned for decades, I imagine those orc slaves are either all dead or they're doing orc shit. Has anybody been experiencing raids that may be coming out of this place?
No more than the usual level of orc raids. It's largely abandoned. At least no one's heard about it for a while. And, yeah, I mean, that's what's One-Armed Pete's opinion. No-Arm Willie just, like, asks Pete to pour some beer in his mouth, and he'll happily tell you stories of orc depredations on his village, and children thrown down wells multiple times, and all the bad things orcs do.
Well, I'll stop harassing you for background details then, and I'm going to go right up to that mountain that I said I already went to before, and walk right down into that big old square corridor, looking maybe for any particularly fresh tracks.
Tracks vanish pretty quickly on the muddy floor of the corridor. Are you doing the traditional old-school ensemble of probing the floor with a 10-foot pole and stopping every while and listening?
I mean, we're going fast, but I figure that doesn't necessarily mean my characters have to.
Time is an illusion.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we're doing the old school thing. Also, all of my 10-foot poles have big old hooks on the end of them. That's just a rule anytime I have a 10-foot pole.
I mean, if your 10-foot pole doesn't have a hook on it, it's obviously your first time playing.
Exactly.
All right. So you advance down this hallway. You meet a door. What's your door opening procedure? I don't want to go over every door because we were trying to be quick, but how do you open a door when you see a door in front of you? It's big, stout oak, somewhat wood damage stuck into its frame.
I figure like Mohawk or Krago is probably taking point on any door opening. And at this point, we're probably just sort of like very briefly listening at doors and then like just bursting them open. If we get into more densely packed areas, maybe we'll be a little more cautious.
Okay. Door swings open. You find yourself in a continuation of the corridor with alcoves on both sides. The alcoves look empty, but you're also not parallel with them yet.
How many alcoves?
One on each side of the hallway.
Oh, just the one. All right, well, I'll approach them cautiously and just sort of peer in each side.
Okay, the alcoves look empty. Up ahead, you see more alcoves.
All right, before I press on ahead, I'm going to search these alcoves for secret doors.
Okay, you search the first set of alcoves for secret doors. Rolling randomly in my head, I rolled a random number that tells me you do not find any secret doors. Or perhaps there are none there to find.
Oh, that's how we're doing this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, podcast D&D is always a little bit bullshit. I figure we might as well, go whole hog.
Right on. So I'll continue on. I'll bypass the second corridor, the second alcoves, assuming they don't have people in them.
No,
and then
they're
I'll
empty.
Push on forward.
The third set of alcoves as well, you push past those?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Alright. Man, as a DM, I kind of don't want to do this, just 'cause this is kind of embarrassing. But as you pass the third pair of alcoves, mouths appear on the stone walls, and the stone itself, lips kind of curl up in a sneer. There's a mouth on your left side in the alcove and a mouth on the right side. The mouth on the right-hand side speaks first in a booming voice, and it says, "Who dares enter this place and intrude upon the sanctuary of its inhabitants?"
Is that box text?
Then the west mouth... Yes. And then there's no box text in this module technically, but there's definitely parts they seem to want you to read. And they have really weird use of bold, but I won't go into that. And then the west mouth speaks up, and it says, "Only a group of foolhardy adventurers, doomed to certain death." And then both mouths shout in unison, "Woe to any who pass this place! The wrath of Zelagar and Rogan will be upon them!" And then both mouths begin a loud and raucous laughter. It could sound like a lot of things. I imagine it sounding like Jeff Goldblum. Which then fades.
They lulled me into a pretty perfect trap with giving me 2 examples of a thing not being anything, and then a third example where it is something, except for the fact that it's just sort of basic magical chicanery that any level 1 wizard can do. Like Magic Mouth is a pretty simple spell.
I think it's a level 2 spell, actually.
Is it? I mean, but, it's not an impressive or scary spell. I just keep going.
I mean, there's a lot of trolling in this dungeon.
Yeah.
And they distinctly make the point this is meant to be an introductory dungeon, so lots of things that are meant to be potentially lethal are usually... there's a few instances of kid gloves where they're a little gentler on you.
Yeah, no, that's actually a good point. That it lulled me into not checking, and then it showed me that not checking was not necessarily the best plan without totally like kicking my ass for it.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to find. I think it's just magical. There's definitely no indication that you can find anything. The mouths just trigger when you walk past it.
Yeah, so the lesson is a little so-so. But anyway, yeah, but it doesn't seem like there's anything with these mouths to tinker with, so I'd just press on.
Yep, the mouths just like smack their lips and vanish. There's a small set of stairs going up, and as you ascend the stairs, you see a gruesome sight. There's 5 corpses here, obviously signs of a pitched battle. 2 of them are wearing spiked cod pieces and have savage facial tattoos and are otherwise unclothed. They look like savage berserkers from the north. And then there's also, looks like the remains of an adventuring party. You have a human fighter, a wizard pinned to the wall with a big sword through his guts, his hand still curled in a wizardly gesture, pinned to his chest by the sword, and a dwarven fighter face down and at the end of a trail of blood. What do you want to do with these corpses?
First, how long have they been dead? I've got a cleric, you should be able to tell.
Pretty recent, it looks like. Well, that's not true. There's various stages of decay, so I'd say a few days.
Interesting.
A couple days.
Is there any clear indication of where the attack may have come from? Any tracks on the floor, or trails of blood leading off anywhere?
Small amounts of mud lead in different directions. I think a lot of it goes north, though. Oh, by the way, you're also at the middle of a 4-way intersection. Oh, probably different groups bump into each other here.
Yeah, so this is my first decision in this dungeon.
There's a path to the west, a path to the east, kind of unmarked. I imagine most of the muddy footprints would go north into the rest of the dungeon. And the module doesn't really say anything about muddy footprints. I just imagine that there must be. There's no floor mats mentioned. And 10 feet to the north, you can see a pair of doors on the east and west. 10 feet to the north beyond that, there's a passageway opening to the west. And 10 feet beyond that, this passageway opening to the east. And then the whole hallway continues to the north. So by my count, that's actually 7 different directions you can go, all within the light of your 30-foot radius of your torch. So,
oy vey.
And there's not really much guidance,
So
given.
No options immediately opened up into way too many options.
Yeah. It's actually one of the things I don't like is this just flood of options without any guidance towards them. Yeah. You can kind of assume the more important things would be central and down the central path, but that's not quite 100% true all the time.
Anyway, I will want to examine these corpses, like particularly paying particular attention to the wizard. Is there anything valuable or special? Is that sword a magic sword? Or is it better than what my fighter has? Does my fighter like it?
The sword is, I'm going to say, it's sawtoothed. and has some sweet like skulls on it, barbarian style. And as you pull it out of the wizard slumps to the floor, and the movement of the rotten corpse smells like 1,000 butts. And now that the wizard's been removed, you can see that he was actually impaled on a large wooden section that has the name of the whole fortress on it, which is Quasqueton.
The wall is wooden underneath the wizard?
Actually, I think it was just a wooden nameplate in the side of the hallway.
Oh man, is Quasqueton... Let's see, early D&D. We're doing a super accelerated version of D&D, so I'm just going to say, is it an anagram? I'm not going to try and figure out the anagram, but is there some way that I could push all of those letters in a specific order to open some kind of secret?
Oh man, I like that you're thinking about letters this early in the dungeon, but no, Quasqueton is not an anagram for anything. I think it's possible I missed something.
That would be so quintessentially like early 80s D&D. All right.
Quasqueton.
So I am going to head to the west.
The hallway goes west for 30 feet, then curves back south. And in no time at all, you get to a little truncated section. And since you've been mapping this on your graph paper, you know it's actually a small dead-end corridor that ends right at the back of the second alcove. And there's, so one of the things about old modules is they don't actually give any guidance for secret doors. So I'm just going to say there's like a panel of stone a different color than the rest off to the east in that small 10-foot dead end section. And then the passage continues off to the south.
Secret doors is actually something I find very interesting. I feel like a lot of the way that secret doors were indicated in these old modules, which is not something that we tend to do a lot of anymore and not something that I find particularly enjoyable, is that they were corridors that went off in a direction and then ended for no reason and had no purpose. And often these dungeons would include like 5 of those, and one of them would have a secret door in it.
Yeah.
And it's not a terrible idea. It is an indication that there's something there to find. It's not the most interesting way to do it, I think, but...
No, it's a damn boring way to do it. The other thing I've seen is gaps in mapping, where you map out the dungeon on your graph paper and you see there's a very obvious blank spot. And then you're supposed to go back there and search the walls for that. That's also a little interesting. It's a reward for good mapping.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if mapping is the most interesting thing about D&D, to be honest.
I almost always play D&D online these days, which makes mapping just so much more of a chore, so I don't make it part of my games. I feel like it's more enjoyable when you're at the table together, and everyone is able to look at the same piece of paper that one person is drawing on, and the referee is able to very trivially say, like, oh, no, I meant to say you went left, not right, or, you know, the referee is able to correct those little errors that creep into human communication.
Yeah, that's true. He's right in front of you. I try to hide secret rooms and secret doors through little symmetries and patterns. Like, if you've played Zelda Breath of the Wild, a lot of the Korok puzzles are just based on that, you know. Notice the odd one out, find the symmetry. The west wing of the dungeon has a room that the east wing seems to lack, but that's the secret door. Or there's a pattern in the hallway, you know. Or there's a pattern in the stone that seems to indicate a room would be there, and investigating that section of the walls there. Or you just stick out, like, an obvious lever, or put a door there but have a hidden lever. There's all kinds of fun ways to make hidden rooms, I think, that don't rely on maps.
Yeah, I generally find that the hidden rooms I include in my dungeons fall into one of 2 categories. One is the one that the players are meant to find through their ingenuity, which could be discovered any number of ways. It maybe is an asymmetry in the design. Maybe it's something that's weird enough that I think the players should want to tinker with it, like a aberrant statue. Or maybe it's like mentioned somewhere else in the dungeon, and it's sort of like reward for exploring and then moving and backtracking. The other type of secret door that I like is the secret door that only the dungeon denizens know about.
That's good.
So you can learn about it through interacting with them, but more likely it's going to be used against you to help them move around.
Yeah. And those are things that can also be good rewards for, like, good gameplay, you know. There's a sense of mastery that comes with a dungeon once you've been in there for a while, where you learn where the stuff is, where the shortcuts are, how to leverage the paths and the traps to your advantage, which, you know, It's good.
Absolutely.
But you made a good point, though, that I like the idea of secrets being driven by character curiosity and weirdness in the dungeon kind of giving you a clue instead of like, I check this 10-foot square, I check that door, you know?
That's also a reason that I don't roll for secret doors in my campaign in any game that I run. I just like, if a player says like, I think there's a secret door here, I'll just tell them yes or no. Like, to me, the challenge should be more identifying where to look than it should be the actual like finding of them.
I like that too. You like it so much you're meowing.
Sorry about that. You know, neither of us has a recording studio, so sounds are going to happen.
That was me meowing, though, just to be clear. All right, so you continue south, you go through a door, you turn around, you turn to the right, you go west. Well, sorry, did you want to investigate the secret door that probably connects back to the alcove?
Yeah, I'll just pop that open.
All right, how are you going to pop it open? Actually, there's no guidance given.
I feel around and I find whatever stone you need to push or whatever.
The wall says, ha 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 ha, and then it swivels around and one of your characters, let's say Sparaga, finds himself back in the second alcove.
Oh, interesting.
This is kind of good, though. I mean, there's a chance players learn that secret doors exist. I think this is kind of an easy one, because, you know, there's a blank, short, dead-end hallway that leads to the back end of an alcove.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a gimme. So it's almost instructional in that way.
It's... Now, is that something that you did, having the door swivel around and pull one of my characters away from the rest of the party, or is that prescribed in the dungeon?
That's entirely me. It just says secret door one way. I mean, I'm going to kind of ignore the one way because I think it's trivial because it's such a small circuit.
Interesting. All right. So, yeah, my Sparaga is going to jog back up through the room with dead bodies and swing west and come back around and rejoin the party and hopefully not encounter anything while he's all alone.
All right. Behind you, you can hear the walls monologuing. Who dares? And then it kind of fades off. All right. Your party's rejoined on the west side of the magic or the secret door.
All right. So I then head south into a room, right?
It's all hallway. It's all just miles and miles of unmarked hallway.
Okay.
The amount of excavation in this place is crazy.
I feel like we've reached a point where my map is no longer matching with like I've made errors in my mapping.
That didn't take very long.
No, it did not.
You continue on south back past the first alcove, and then you turn west, and you're on a westward corridor. Do you want to take the nondescript corridor to the west or the nondescript door to the north?
We'll take the door to the north.
I really feel like they could do a better job giving you interesting choices, because every intersection is a choice. Alright, so you find yourself in a four-way intersection once again, also unmarked.
Seriously? Okay. So a four-way intersection. I think that's something that even new modules don't do a great job of, making intersections in dungeons interesting choices.
I mean, have interesting intersections, have noises, have bloodstains, have signs. I like having chalk on the wall that says, like, this side looted, go that way or something. You know?
I feel like there's advancement to be made in terms of communicating the better, but I think there's also an element of just teaching the referee to intuit, hey, I have an intersection here, giving them easy access to, like, what's that way, what's this way, and then helping them, like, figure out how to tell the players, you come to a four-way intersection, there's, you see some light far down that way, you hear some chatter down that way, and you see some blood stains down the other way.
Okay, I mean, it's not listed in the module, but I can also tell you there's a musty stink to the north, and if you pause and listen for a second, you can hear sort of like a crackling voice go, "Raka, raka, yeah," also in the same direction.
All right, well, north sounds like the most productive direction then, so let's head that way.
All right. You go down looks like a 70-foot corridor before it opens up into a different room. Man, this place is so big. Down the 70-foot corridor, and it opens up into this eerie and strange sight. Strange fungi bloom from the walls. Little shelf fungi, creaking under the weight of their growth, also nurture these little nests of glowing tufts of more fungi, nodding their heads as you approach. Puffballs, coral fungi, even morels sort of sprout from between the stones here. Some sort of magic or moisture or both keeps them seem to be proliferating. Up ahead, the noise has stopped. It sounded like humanoids grunting and creaking. I do want to point out that your torch is highly visible, and basically everything in this day and age has dark vision.
Yeah. I am going to have a good part of my party sort of hang out in this room, maybe go off to the side so that their light isn't so immediately visible. And then I'm going to pull off Krago and Sparaga, my thief and my dwarf, to scout up ahead, hopefully trying to be as sneaky as possible, with Sparaga helping Krago be a little quiet, and Krago helping Sparaga by describing the things he sees because he's a dwarf.
Okay. You continue north and past these strange reefs of fungi. The northern room opens up, and you can see it's shaped like an L facing to the left instead of facing to the right. There's a couple pits, or you see one pit with your dark vision off to the north, also just lined with strange fungi. Underneath you, puffball fungi are crushed as if by large footprints or large footsteps, but there's no sign or noise of the former voice. The room is just a huge room. Maybe it goes beyond the range of your 30-foot dark vision. And it's just fungal gloom pervades the whole thing. There's no sign of the voices. It's a big room, though, and has two wings, one to the west and one to the north.
All right. So you say that there's pits?
There's a pit in front of you.
All right.
It seems to be about 10 feet by 20 feet, and it's just choked with fungi.
So I am going to head to the west into that wing of the room, but I'm going to, as I go, take a look into the pit and any other pits that I pass, just to see if I discover anything there.
All right. You kind of go near the first pit, and you look, or I guess your dwarf looks in it, and inside it you can see a reptilian face with pupils of two different sizes. A long, slavering tongue, licking sharp teeth, and then he lunges forward and tries to grab your dwarf by the head and pull him into the pit. And at the same time, you hear more fungi crunching underfoot as more of these reptilian creatures kind of trundle out of these hidden bushes off to the north.
All right.
A combat is happening.
So, I guess the first question is, do I get to act, or does my dwarf get pulled into the hole?
You make your strength check, but I'm going to take away 1 point of group HP.
Oh, no. All right, so...
Your group now has 99 hit points as a whole.
Sparaga and Krago are going to book it back south to rejoin the rest of the party. Once they think they're close enough to be heard, they're going to holler, "To arms, to arms."
All right. There's a sound of more crashing reptilian feet behind you, more creaking squawks and groans as these things trundle forward. You can see a few flashes of light. One of them is dragging an enormous halberd as it pursues you down the hallway. It looks like there's two of them, sorry.
Two lizard people or creatures?
Yeah, they're big and stocky. They look like lizard jocks.
All right.
One's got a halberd and one has nothing but his own horrible, sharp-toothed mouth.
The rest of the party, who is hearing this to arms call coming down the corridor.
Most are hidden around the corner.
Yeah, they are hidden around the corner. I'm going to have the group with the torch stay on the corner that they are hiding behind already. And then half of the rest of the party is going to go to the other side. So that they are flanking the entry into this larger chamber, so that as Krago and Sparaga run past, they can then bop whoever comes out next with sword and mace.
Alright, I'm just going to throw you into combat. Your clever ruse gives you an advantage. Instead of losing 10 hit points, you only lose like 6, which puts you at 93.
Alright, so does that, did I win the combat? And
oh, you won the combat.
Okay.
You won it handily.
Awesome.
They're level 2 troglodytes, but you know, they're stupid and smelly. And you know, it's not in the module, but I imagine they weren't doing anything in that room but getting high and like hugging. So they're not in the best fighting shape.
Absolutely. So I'm going to assume that there's more trouble in that room up ahead than it is perhaps worth. I'm going to head back south to that 4-way intersection that I was in before. And
Okay.
I'm going to head east because I figured that can't be that long of a corridor, right?
Yeah, off to the east 30 feet, it turns north 20 feet, it turns west into a door. And you open that door, I assume, and pop right on in.
Yep.
And you find yourself in a room full of 10 wooden benches scattered around the room, each one 15 feet. They're like pews, but in disrepair. More small fungi kind of sprout from the side of them. Dark stains of mold cover them. At the north end of the room, a large stone slab serves as sort of a stage, rising 10 inches off the floor. Behind the small stage, there's 4 decorative banners, red, green, blue, and yellow, now sadly sank into a state of ruin.
All right. With 10-foot pole and moving carefully through the room, I'm going to poke and prod these banners to make sure that they are not covered in some kind of deadly mold or fungus that's going to explode in horrible powdery death.
It would be cool if there was like a yellow poison and a green poison and a red poison, but no, they're just very generic banners.
All right.
That sag to pieces under the weight of their own weight of age and time and mildew and rot.
Oh, so did they hide anything?
Behind those banners, nothing.
All right. Well, I will take a quick glance underneath the pews, and then I will return to that 4-way intersection.
On one of the pews, you search the top of the pews as well. On top of one of the pews, you find a small wooden box, about the size of 2 fists.
I am going to have Sparaga search that box for obvious traps.
No traps are found. Sparaga opens the box. I honestly picture Sparaga saying his own name whenever he does anything right. He's like, Sparaga! Brilliant! And he opens it, and inside is 35 gold pieces.
Oh, score. This adventure's already paid for itself.
Yeah, I don't know what the rate is, but I imagine like a gold piece being like what a farmer makes in a day. So this is definitely enough to throw a pretty kick-ass party.
That's really the whole point of D&D, is to earn enough money to throw kick-ass parties.
Sparaga!
Back to that 4-way intersection, and fuck it, let's head west.
Okay. You notice you are in a spiral pretty quickly. A tightening spiral. Dare you proceed to see what's at the center?
Does the spiral go up, down, or is it just...
No, it's flat and level plane. You go west and north, then east and south, and then that pattern repeats.
All right. I'm going to have Mohog stand on the outside of the spiral and then just make sure that we don't fall into like a time loop or something. Like if he's like, oh man, they're just standing over there, not eating, walking in place, then maybe he can save us. Everyone else is going to head down.
All right, tie a rope to someone then. But the rope's that's pretty long.
Yeah, I don't think that, like, I thought about the rope thing, but I assume it's longer than 100 feet, and I don't think it's fair to assume I have more than 100 feet of rope.
That's very kind of you, thank you. It's a spiral, it's unremarkable. There's a door halfway through that connects 2 layers of the spiral, but at the very center of the spiral, you discover a dead end.
Awesome. I searched that dead end for any kind of weirdness.
There's nothing there.
All right. So,
I mean, if this was my module, I'd put, like, this is where the 3rd troglodyte is, because he was too high and his friends put him here to chill out, and he's just drinking water.
So, but, I mean, I'll retreat from here, and it is officially not a thing that I'm going to investigate further. Switching over to the part where we talk about dungeon design, does this have any function at all?
No, it's just straight trolling. It's a dead-end room.
Okay.
They play a lot of weird little map games. Like, this is very... After reading the whole thing, it's very clearly meant to fuck with people who map things out. And I think this is just meant to, I don't know, raise questions without any answers.
Cool. I feel like something really fun to do with a spiral like that would be to have something at the end that has an effect immediately upon looking at it. Like, so you're giving the players just like this constant repeated, like, you know, oh man, like, your vision of whatever's in the center is being blocked over and over and over again, and you just keep moving towards it. You know you're going towards something.
Yeah. I mean, I think of a couple ideas. You can make it a non-Euclidean spiral that, even though it seems to be normal size, is actually like a mile to the center. And you can put people there, put something cool there.
I mean, you could do all sorts of weird metaphysical, like, using imaginary space shit with a spiral, but just with a mundane, boring spiral, like, I feel like you got to put something in the middle that warrants the player's consistent decision to continue going around in this obviously weird way.
I mean, you could also have like a rune that just turns this whole section, the spiral, into a labyrinth with lots of shifting one-way doors and nonsense, you know? Or a rune of insanity. I don't know. I mean, people always talk about the value of dead-end rooms kind of as like a spacer, you know, a calm spot between more exciting rooms. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't like this one.
Yeah, I don't like it. It's not good.
Let's leave it behind and never speak of it.
Yeah. And like, of course, we've sat down to talk about dungeon design, so now we've put ourselves in this position of being like, thing good, thing bad, thing good,
I'm okay with that.
Thing bad.
And I don't want to brag, but I'm really good at pronouncing things good or bad.
I catch myself doing it, and then I'm like, who the fuck am I? There's a ton of ways you could have fun with that.
Man, when me and my friends watch Star Wars, that's all we do. It's great.
All right, so I'm going to go back to that four-way intersection. I believe I've now reasonably examined all the directions, aside from ignoring most of that very large room far to the north. I'm going to go back south.
Okay, from there you can go east to where you started at the original massacre intersection, or you can continue west.
Oh yeah, I'm going to continue west.
Okay, so you're still in the southwest quadrant of the first floor. Continuing west, you go to the west, hit a corner, you turn north. You follow a route that actually kind of has a little sinusoidal curve to it. It goes off-grid just to be annoying for no reason at all. Eventually it goes back on-grid a little further up to the northeast. And then it goes diagonal about 50 feet, no, maybe 60 feet to the northwest. And then diagonal about 50, 60, 70 feet to the northeast before entering in a another four-way intersection. An eastern passage, 2 eastern passages and a southern passage, and then a southwest passage back the way you came. You also passed a secret door on your northwest on that diagonal. Did you make your search check to find it? You had a 2 in 6 chance.
I do not.
Actually, no, 1 in 6.
I don't have an elf in my party, so I don't get an automatic check.
You have a dwarf, though, I think, to notice special stonework.
Oh, well, cool. You said 2 eastern and 1...
1 southern. Those are the new directions you found after your northwest and then northeast zigzag.
Cool. Maybe this is just me. When I make choices in a dungeon about which way to go, and they constantly explode into ever-increasing numbers of choices, I tend to find that kind of stressful. And, I mean, you know, that's not necessarily bad.
Oh, no, I'm the same way.
And when stuff loops around and connects with something, with a place I've already been, that's always super satisfying. Yeah.
Yeah.
This, particularly how much nothing there is, I find kind of frustrating.
I don't know. Part of this dungeon, I think, stems from this urge to conduct some sort of Gygaxian naturalism, where you include little nods to things like bathrooms and bedrooms, but you also have no problem putting these like tremendous, huge spirals of nothing in the middle of your dungeon. And sure, you figure you need an auditorium, but you don't stock it with anything interesting, you know?
Yeah.
You could have a magic mouth in there. You could have a little servant golem still reciting parts of a speech, you know? You could have speech notes where Zeligar is talking about the need to betray Rogon. None of this is in there, but, you know, you could do shit like that.
And, I mean, Gygaxian naturalism sure is a way to make a thing. I'm not a fan of it. I get very bored of it. But there's no way that someone would make this much empty corridor.
You've already walked like half a mile.
Exactly.
Man. It feels like you've been at Disneyland for an hour and still haven't been on a ride.
Yeah, I mean, just there's if you're, I mean, carving into a rock, just making corridors out of stone is a pain in the ass. It takes forever. Like, there's no reason to just go in one direction for a million miles. Now, if you're a wizard making some kind of bizarre funhouse for mysterious reasons, then go for it. But if this is supposed to be a place where people lived and we're going to put like bedrooms and toilets in there, then come on, speed it up.
I did a dungeon once that was just an entire summoning circle carved into the rock, and once you figured it out, you kind of knew the rest of the dungeon.
Oh.
I don't know. That was fun.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. All right.
Anyway, did you find your secret door or no?
No,
or is your dwarf drunk?
You're the one who understands the die rolls that are happening.
Oh yes, I saw it quite clearly in my mind's eye. You found the supply room. It contains A coil of heavy rope, 200 feet in length, a box of iron spikes, 50 of them, a box of metal nails, a pile of wooden beams, each 10 feet in length and 6 inches by 6 inches in width. There are 80 of those. A sack of building mortar, almost empty. A stack of stone blocks, each 6 inches by 6 inches by 12 inches in size. There's 400 of those. 6 wooden doors, leaning in a row against the wall. A large box of assorted hardware, including several locks of various types. Door hinges, clasps, and hasps. Door handles, assorted metal bolts and similar items. And a jug of dried glue.
All right. This brings up another point about secret doors, actually. This is the first time we're doing this, so it's kind of experimental. I am obviously not very far through this dungeon yet, and I'm a little concerned that we've been talking for almost 50 minutes because no one's going to listen to a 4-hour podcast. I also don't want to record or edit a 4-hour podcast. I have other things to do with my time. But secret rooms. So there's basically two types of secret doors. There's secret doors that lead to a place that can only be accessed via the secret door, and then there's secret doors that create connections through the dungeon.
Yeah, I like those.
Yeah, there's room for both, but I feel like if the secret door leads to a room that can only be accessed via secret means, it's got to be something that's not a storage room. for what, bricks and mortar?
Can you imagine the workers? They're like, hey, have you seen the glue? Have you seen the iron spikes? I know we have 50 of them around here somewhere. Everyone's like, no, haven't seen them.
Or is this an attempt to communicate to us that someone was grifting, and they were just, they were maybe ordering more supplies than they were using, and then
that's a great idea.
Storing them over here, and then very sneaky.
I've read this whole thing. No subplots seem to emerge out of it. There's no hidden subtext in this module. Sadly.
The best stories are always the one that emerge unintentionally from suggestion.
Yeah, sometimes players come up with great stuff. I like the idea of a grifter, especially one that leaves notices or has the same signal around the whole dungeon, and they're all just located full of caches of embezzled goods. Kind of reminds me of Portal. All right, so you find some more rooms. You find.
I went south. I got to the 4-way intersection and I went south.
Do you want to move a little faster? Can I just throw rooms at you?
Oh yeah, no, that works. Let's try that.
So you enter a whirlwind of discovery and you find 3 more secret doors, all within 50 feet of your 4-way intersection. Room number 10 is another storeroom. There's a whole bunch of. There's 60 barrels in this room. All the barrels have 2-letter or 1-letter codes attached to them, full of mundane goods, such as whole barley, wheat flour, rye flour, salt pork, dill pickles. This kind of reminds me of the last room, the other secret supply room. I don't know why they're secret, but remember that, those chapters in American Psycho, where he just lists details of pop albums, and it just seems like, I don't know, there's no reason to go into that much detail. It's just the, sort of the meanderings of a mad mind, sort of try to find these mundane trappings and knock them down into these quantifiable known lists,
Yeah.
You find hard candy, you find lard, you find wine, ale, whole peas, dried apples, fish and brine. Just tons of this shit.
I mean, D&D attracts a certain kind of mind, and it can encourage what I would call unhealthy behaviors in some people, like obsessive documentation of things.
I used to have this theory that there was 2 kinds of people. I've discarded this theory since then, but I used to think there were 2 kinds of people that played D&D. There was the people that wanted to pave the world flat, knock it down into grids, straight lines, no numbers, and I used to generate Pathfinder characters compulsively. I found it soothing. I had a folder with 200 of them, each one representing an hour of work. But I found that relaxing in a way that known, established, quantifiable systems are. And I also think that D&D attracts a second type of person that just enjoys the rabid fantastic that it can provide, the wild mindscapes. And I think for a good D&D game, you need a little bit of both.
Yeah.
And there's more to it than that, but that's kind of a starting point for thoughts. This dungeon, I think, falls in the first category.
I guess what I should say, I have a tendency sometimes to say, like, to refer to people when I'm talking about me. I think there's, D&D encourages behaviors in me that I've found unhealthy, like describing shit that doesn't need to be described.
I'm going to pick a couple more rooms that are also secret and very close to where you are at this four-way intersection that you just stumbled into. One is here's the workroom. There's large wooden tables in this room. One's overturned. There's also a huge central table made of black slate. Along the north wall, there's cabinets. Searching them, you find, again, a tremendously meticulous list of mundane materials, including white sand, brown sand, black sand, brackish water, mineral, salt, sulfur, wood chips of different types, herbs, including dill and garlic, tree sap, carbon, including coal ash and graphite. I don't know, I'll stop there. But it's a similar room to the last one. This is the wizard's workroom, and it's just a huge set of cabinets like this. We can skip those, but there's also one interesting item in here, and that's a large jar that contains a black cat floating in a clear, colorless liquid. There's a large cork stopper.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll tinker with that. I'll shake it up.
It seems like a drowned cat, not rotten, entirely preserved, as if it was drowned yesterday, sitting in a large jar of liquid.
All right. On the assumption that this cat is a dark god that is being just barely held in check by this wizard's goo jar, I'm going to uncork it and dump it out.
As soon as you start uncorking and dumping the thing, I like your reasoning, by the way. Are you just trying to stir mischief? Are you looking for something interesting?
A little bit. I mean, this dungeon has not given me a lot of knobs to turn or switches to flip yet.
This is true. It's unless you're really interested in jars of urine. As soon as you pour out the cat, the liquid instantly evaporates. The cat springs to life. It meows and meows loudly, and it runs for the door, which you left open. You foolishly left open, and the cat dashes into the hallway, meows again, and vanishes somewhere in the distance.
Actually, I'm fairly certain that I teleported into this room without going through any intervening space. So I think the door, if anything, is still stuck in its hinge from being closed so long.
All right. Luckily, there's actually a provision for that. If the door is not open, the cat will be seen to pass through the door and disappear. You can't thwart this kind of like boilerplate DMing.
Yeah, it's like
boilerplate adventure design.
It's like B2, which is another introductory adventure where there's a small section full of undead, and every single undead creature has a talisman of resist turn, of turn resistance.
God, that's annoying. Or you find those dungeons, the whole dungeon has an aura of no teleport, no detect spells, no scrying. That's fucking stupid.
Okay. Maybe that cat will show up later. Maybe it's nothing.
Man, see, that's also... I'll read more of the module to you. In no case will the feline be seen again. The occurrence has no special meaning except to provide surprise and or mystify the adventurers, as well as provide some fun for the DM. Man, what a wasted opportunity.
I remember hearing something that has really stuck with me about why D&D is a good game, is that the trivial things that don't seem like they matter, because of the way the game is structured, can totally matter. The fact that the player randomly decided to wear a blue shirt one day can easily wind up like, oh, here's a cult where all the priests wear blue or something.
Or I saw one where everything that's blue is invisible to a certain creature, stuff like that. Yeah,
like these trivial details that don't matter in any way can be made to matter, and to have an introductory adventure in particular, but to have an officially published adventure where the referee is explicitly told, this is nothing. Nothing can come of this. That's to me antithetical to what it is to play D&D.
Yeah, I mean, you want meaningful choices. You want the things the players to do to matter. You want the decision to uncork the dark cat god to mean something. It's obviously a supernatural cat. The only reason I think you'd ever want something like this is if you already have an abundance of fantastical things around you. You're like, all right, we don't need one more unleashed demigod in the dungeon. We already have 4 at this point. This cat's a meaningless cat. But we don't have that problem. We have the opposite problem. We have a lack of weird shit in this dungeon, you know?
Well, I mean, it can be a meaningless cat. Like, I mean, it doesn't have to be a demigod. But I would say, hey, there's a phase-shifted cat loose in the dungeon now. And it's going to occasionally just walk through rooms, like in one wall, out another wall, and it's going to mewl and meow. And it's very upset that it can't catch this mouse because its paws keep going through it. Like, just have there be something.
Or yeah, just anything. Like you said, even small things like a phase cat. Or it could be like a fucking displacer beast kitten or something. I don't know, man. Maybe they don't grow their tentacles until they fucking see the full moon. I don't know.
And then, like, that opens up this idea of, like, okay, how can the players use this cat? They can't really tempt it in many ways, but if they could rig up some sort of medieval-style laser pointer, they could at least, like, maybe direct where it goes.
I was thinking going back to the room of boring liquids and pouring out some milk. Or I guess you're already in the room of boring liquids.
Yes, I am.
There's no milk in the list, I think, though. There's alcohol. Spoiled.
That is a gosh darn shame.
I mean, you just pour everything on the floor and assume the cat's gonna like something. Petroleum.
All right, let's try and get through a couple more rooms here.
All right, one more room is off to the south, adjacent to the wizard's workroom, is the laboratory. It's 50 feet by 30 feet. The room is dominated by a large human skeleton suspended from the ceiling in the northeast corner. The skull is cracked. There's more wooden tables in here, and all the tables are bare except for a single stoppered smoked glass bottle on one of the tables. There's a lot of shit in this room. There's also pegs. There's also shit under a table. It's a pile of, looks like, pine logs. There's a wooden torture rack. There's a stretched leather skin, a sunken fire pit, a cast iron pot, some things that might be hot tubs, 6 earthen containers, an empty coffin, and 2 kegs.
Oof, that's a lot. So I guess what is smoked glass? Just
smoked glass?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just gonna assume it's like not pure. It's not translucent. It's opaque.
All right,
But I can also Google it if you're really curious.
I don't care. I'm gonna shake it a little bit, see if there's like anything inside of it that I can see.
It looks like it's full of, I don't know. There's a lack of cats in this one. It's full of smoke.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I unstopper it and let out the smoke, which is no doubt gonna kill me. But you know.
All right. So for your foolhardy adventurousness being punished. It's laughing gas, and you guys spend a bunch of time laughing. I roll a wandering encounter. A wandering encounter is happen.
I offer to share this laughing gas with the druggy troglodytes.
It is too late. There's nothing to do except for laugh. You're staggering around helpless. Wandering monsters show up and they get free rounds against you while you laugh. It'd be great if some orcs like walk in and they're also laughing, and you guys have like a few rounds to like laugh and then interact while non-combat rounds, where you're forced into non-combat, and then like after the gas wears off simultaneously, you guys are all like, "So are we fighting? That was pretty fun. Let's go find some more laughing gas." But no, I think monsters just walk in there and start whacking on you if you get a wandering encounter check.
All right. Well, I get whacked on. I mean, if I'm incapacitated, then it sounds like I'm just straight up TPK'd at that point.
No, you're gonna lose 48 points. You're down to 53, but you finally finish off the 3 orcs that busted in.
All right. Well, that's rough. I was gonna say it doesn't sound like there's anything else in this room, but it actually sounds like there's a lot in this room. Just nothing interesting.
Incredibly, the trend continues. Underneath the pine logs, there's a shiny gold ring that's actually... It looks brilliant, but it's actually worthless. The torture rack has some dried blood on it. There's nothing special about it. The stretched leather skin actually has letters carved into it. And if you use read magic on it, it reads, "What mysterious happenings have their birth here? Only the greatest feats of wizardry, for which every element of earth, water, and sky is but a tool." And if you try to remove that leather skin, it crumbles. The fire pit's boring. The cast iron pot has residue but is boring. The other pot is also boring. The vats are empty and boring. One has some muddy water in it. The earthen containers are also boring. The empty coffin, God, coffins are so... They have a lot of mimetic weight. There's a lot of strong things you can do with a coffin just because they tend to dominate the encounters of the rooms they're found in. But this one's also empty. The kegs contain the same stuff as the storeroom, so they can have like boring beer in them. And there's powdered incense, and that's it. That's the entire room. The wizard's laboratory contains a very potentially punishing laughing gas, and a bunch of nothing. I mean, I could stock it with items. I put a dagger +1 in the room, but that's sort of like optional stocking based on the module zone guidance. There's nothing built into it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not a good, like, that optional stocking is not a good way to teach.
No.
Like,
I mean, what kind of mindset do you think leads people to make these rooms of... I don't know. I see players, I see just long lines of generations of players investigating the gold ring that's worthless, trying to remove the magic leather skin that's also worthless, licking the residue in the pots that's also worthless, and nothing fantastic happens, you know?
Yeah.
You just spend time in here.
So, it sounds like you were looking to wrap up after that room.
Yeah, I want to say, why don't you pop open the module itself and take a look at the map.
Okay.
You've explored, like, out of the western side of the map, you've explored everything except for the top left corner.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, my drawing was quite a bit different. Let's see.
So you did the spiral, that weird pair of diagonals. The triangular room was the room full of barrels. Rooms 8 and 9 you're in currently. That's the wizard's laboratory and workshop. You never explored 17, 18, 19, but those are still a ways away. I don't know.
Oy vey.
As a dungeon, it has a lot of hallways, and there's plenty of rooms, but the density's pretty low.
Yeah. I mean, this is the way that everyone starts out making dungeons, right? And then I feel like...
zigzag hallways are interesting?
I mean, not so much the zigzag hallways, yes, but the density of it. And I feel like as people get better at making dungeons, almost universally, they start putting in a lot more white space in between the rooms. Mm-hmm. If for no other reason, so that they can be read easier.
Uh-huh.
Like, I can't, like, I look at this and I can barely even recognize anything.
Yeah.
Huh. So, I would like to talk. Like, we've recorded for an hour. Some of that's gonna come down, but I don't wanna make this too long. I would like to append here a little discussion about how we think this went and how we can make it better, because this is a weird kind of podcast idea. It's not something that we have a lot of examples for, and I think that we should treat these first few episodes as an experiment primarily.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So I mean, what are your thoughts?
Going through a whole dungeon is kind of a daunting thing, even at the accelerated rate we did with the very brief combat. I like that we talk about it, and I think there's some good discussion to be had. I think both of us tried to move very quickly. Mm-hmm. We didn't want to get bogged down too much in discussion. I'm kind of sad you saw this part of the dungeon, because there are some rooms that are really, really good. If you look on the east side of the map, room 31 has 14 different magic pools in it, each with a different liquid. That's fucking great. And you'd figure out what they are by experimenting with them. That's fucking great. I love that. Mm-hmm. That has a great ability for players to walk in there and start experimenting and actually reap some rewards, unlike a lot of these fucking empty rooms. I mean, yes, sure, it's fine to get some 8-foot steel beams and some ropes, whatever. That's semi-useful, but mystic pools, some that are steaming, some that are smoking, some which are glimmering, that's kind of cool, and it actually captures the imagination, and it's something you'd expect to see.
I think we both came into this with the idea that we would, using this accelerated mode of play, examine this whole dungeon.
We were fools.
Yeah.
I was a younger man back then. I was much more foolish.
And I think, like, one, obviously we didn't accomplish that. We got through, I would wager, like, less than 25% of the dungeon.
I was going to say 20%, yeah.
And in so doing, I think we kind of lost some of the fun that we could have had with it. I think we lost. I don't know how clearly this is going to come across to listeners, like what the action is. I don't think that we should go through these things at a normal pace by any means, but I think that in future, slowing it down a little bit and saying, yeah, this dungeon is going to take 3 episodes, 4 episodes of the podcast.
You know what we could also do is we could just go straight to interesting parts and say, hey, this is interesting about this dungeon. It seems kind of unique. What do you think about this? Or I could be like, hey, you find yourself in this room with these things in it. What process do you use to derive on a decision, you know? Mm-hmm. Like I know in the Forerunner section, you just wanted something interesting, so you went towards the fungal stench.
Yeah. I mean, if we did that, would we be losing out on some perspective for how these dungeons are presented?
Yes, we would, but we get a better density of the episode. We cover more ground and potentially hit the high points and interesting points. Yeah. I could just say, like, hey, there's a lot of storerooms in this dungeon. They're weird and hidden. Look at that. Isn't that weird? What do you think about that? You know?
Certainly it did, all of the walking around in corridors was not great. But also, I feel like this is maybe a particularly bad example of that for us to be basing our format on.
This dungeon's a lot of corridors.
Yeah, there's a lot of corridors and a lot of rooms that are boring. If we were to just jump to interesting stuff, I think that there's a risk of not examining the act of discovery of the interesting thing. Like, if you teleport me to a room and you're like, okay, so there's a room, there's a bunch of boring stuff in this room, and there's a cat in a jar. Then it's like, okay, so we're just talking about a cat in a jar at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, we do lose something. But, I mean, I don't want to spend your time, like, sniffing paprika, you know? How many minutes do you want to spend on that?
No, I mean, I think that there's a balance for us to set there. There's a way to, like, to say, like, okay, here's the room that you got to. Well, I don't know. Fuck if I know.
I want to end on one question. So I think I've hit on many things that I didn't like. Was there anything about this dungeon that you did like?
I mean, there's a lot that I liked. I would use in my own dungeons, but I would use them differently. Like the cat. Yeah. I think the cat was great. Having it be something that they literally tell you can't use anywhere else, and it's just meant to be fun that ends after it runs out of the room, that's boring. Mm-hmm. But having it be like, oh no, now there's a spectral cat wandering around this dungeon, that's interesting. Coming upon a group of dead bodies like shortly within the dungeon, pretty good.
Yeah, that's great. It conveys information and it gives you some corpses to loot, and it's captivating.
Yeah. I also think that as an introductory adventure, the long corridor with the 3 groups of alcoves is really neat, because the first one is nothing, and it presents you with something interesting, and then completely doesn't reward you for looking into it. And then immediately, if you fall into the trap of assuming that there's nothing interesting about any of the alcoves, it punishes you for that, because there's something interesting about all the rest of the alcoves. The second set has secret doors, and the third set has magic mouths. The magic mouths could have been more interesting. They could have been something for the players to discover. Could have been a trap or an ambush, or even some kind of like minor treasure.
I think it's just practice for the DM to use his stupid voices.
I would like to return to this dungeon in episode 2.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah. I mean, I'm down to do it some more. There's a lot to find. And we can talk about the format we want to use outside of this recording.
No, we absolutely can, but I also think that it's interesting to have some of that discussion in the open. Because if for no other reason, then I would want people who listen to this to know that we recognize that maybe this was not the best way for it to be done.
True. I'm with you there. One thing I liked is I actually kind of like storerooms if they lend themselves more to adventurousness, you know? Like if there were jars of glue in a storeroom, that's cool. If there's 500 bricks, I mean, potentially you could brick up a hallway, you know? There's lots of things you can do with the stuff in the storerooms. It's just, I don't know, there's the room full of barrels full of, like, grape seeds really rubbed me the wrong way, and the room full of construction equipment should have been more interesting to me. But there's lots. Construction equipment is cool, like bags of like malted barley, less so. I mean, unless you're brewing. Part of that's on me. I could have abbreviated it more, but I don't know. I like details as long as they're interesting and they lead to like fun conclusions. Like if you treated my house as a dungeon and you came into my room and started going through my shit, it would take you like 50 hours for me just to list all the 5 hours just to list all the things in this room. There's a lot of stuff in this room.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and that's not what I want in a dungeon. I want, you know, the interesting bits, the handles, the leverages for future encounters. I want pieces of the dungeon history to present themselves. One story that almost emerges from the text is the story of this guy smacking down barbarian tribes who then send berserkers to loot the place. It'd be great to like have more of that come through, but they don't really give it the proper treatment. It's treated just like a list of rooms.
I think,
which is too bad. It's not holistic in a way that some dungeons are.
There's a push and a pull to that though, because yeah, it's not interesting to describe literally everything in a room, and it's more interesting when stuff lends themselves to adventuresome purposes. But like we were just talking about earlier, you never really know what could be an interesting addition to an adventure. Like your players might have like having a barrel full of barley might spark some kind of idea in your players that would be interesting to see play out at the table.
Yeah.
So it's valuable to have that stuff there. It's just a matter of presenting it in a way that doesn't take a million years and obscure the more interesting things from the referee. Obscuring it from the players is kind of okay. But when the referee can't look at a room description and figure out what the important bits are, that's more of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I propose a compromise then. Instead of 60 boring barrels, how about 57 smashed barrels and 3 interesting ones? Salt is cool. You can dump it on a pudding, you know. There's lots of potentially interesting things.
I mean, I would say 50 barrels is fine. Just don't tell me what's in them. Tell me they contain various supplies of various food stores.
Yeah, but then the player's going to want what supplies, and you have to go through it, and then it's like, it appears to be a white powder. All right, how do you test the powder, you know?
I'm kind of okay with that.
Do you want to spend more time in the room of barrels? Because there's 60 of them in there.
If the players see 50 barrels, and I tell them it's a bunch of food stuff, and they want to open each and every one, and I mean, that's I feel like that's the players being weird. But I'll play that game with them. I'll be like, that one's barley. That one's more barley.
That's true. In that case, it could be like better guidance for me, I guess, is don't spend time on details. You know, I told you what was in the barrels for the sake of expediency, but we could easily have left them as just like mysterious barrels. You could crack a couple open and leave, you know. Finding
the balance between expediency and actually playing the dungeon is going to be the keystone that makes this podcast work.
Yeah, we'll work on it. We'll find it.
All right.
I do... Oh, go ahead.
I was just thinking that this seems like a pretty good place for an outro followed by a stopping recording.
Oh, shit, we gotta find music, don't we? All right, Cue it!